Today's teaching explores Babel's legacy, not merely an ancient tower, but a continuing spiritual pattern that has shaped human civilization, political power, culture, language, and theology. The Tower of Babel is one of the most misunderstood passages in Scripture. Many read it as a story about languages alone. In reality, it is a revelation about human ambition without God, centralized power that resists divine authority, and the long-term consequences of pride-driven unity. Babel explains why humanity is fragmented, why empires rise and fall, why culture often resists God, and why Scripture later speaks so strongly against something called Babylon. What begins in Genesis echoes all the way to Revelation. This message will unfold in 5 movements: the world after the flood, the sin of Babel, God's judgment and scattering, Babel's continuation through history, God's redemptive answer at Pentecost, and beyond. Part 1, the world after the flood, approx. 8 minutes. Genesis 10 and 11 must be read together. After the flood, humanity receives a clear command from God: be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth. Genesis 9-1. God's intention was distribution, stewardship, and dependence. Humanity was meant to spread across the earth, developing cultures under God's authority. Genesis 10 presents the table of nations, listing 70 nations descended from Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. This chapter emphasizes diversity by design. Different lands, clans, and languages are mentioned, even before Genesis 11 describes the confusion of language. This tells us that Genesis 11 is not about the origin of language itself, but about a forced uniformity that resisted God's command. By Genesis 11, humanity has migrated eastward and settled in the land of Shinar, later known as Babylon. Instead of spreading out, they settle down. Instead of trusting God, they trust proximity, technology, and numbers. Part 2, the sin of Babel, approx. 12 minutes. Genesis 11-4 records humanity's defining statement: come, let us build ourselves a city, and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth. This single verse reveals 4 core sins. 1. Self-sufficiency. Let us build for ourselves. God is not consulted. Worship is absent. Prayer is absent. Human capability replaces divine dependence. 2. Self-exaltation. Let us make a name for ourselves. In Scripture, God alone gives names and establishes legacy. Babel seeks identity apart from God. 3. False security. A city and a tower. Cities in the ancient world symbolized safety, control, and permanence. A tower likely functioned as a ziggurat, a religious structure intended to manipulate divine access rather than submit to it. 4. Direct disobedience. Lest we be scattered, God commanded scattering. Babel resists dispersion. Unity becomes rebellion. This is crucial. Babel was not condemned for unity, but for unity without God. Part 3. God's judgment and the scattering, approx. 10 minutes. Genesis 11-5 says, and the Lord came down to see the city and the tower. This is divine irony. Humanity attempts to ascend to heaven, while God must come down to even observe their achievement. God's judgment is measured, not destructive. He does not destroy the city. He confuses the language. Why language? Language enables cooperation. Cooperation fuels rebellion. Confusion interrupts pride. The scattering was not punishment alone. It was containment. Left unchecked, humanity's unified rebellion would accelerate corruption. Babel becomes both a historical event and a theological symbol. Human systems that exalt themselves inevitably fracture. Part 4. Babel becomes Babylon, approx. 15 minutes. Babel does not disappear after Genesis 11. It reappears throughout Scripture under the name Babylon. Babylon in the prophets. Babylon represents political arrogance, Isaiah 14. Economic exploitation, Jeremiah 51. Spiritual rebellion, Daniel 4. Nebuchadnezzar's declaration mirrors Babel. Is not this great Babylon, which I have built by my mighty power, and for the glory of my majesty? Daniel 4:30. The spirit of Babel is empire without humility. Babylon in Revelation. Revelation 17-18 portrays Babylon as a global system, a corrupting influence, a false source of security. Babylon is no longer a city, it is a worldview. Part 5. The redemption of Babel at Pentecost. Approx. 10 minutes. Acts 2 presents the divine reversal of Babel. At Babel, one language becomes many. Humanity is scattered pride, motivates unity at Pentecost. Many languages hear one gospel. The nations are invited back. Humility and obedience mark unity. God does not erase languages, he redeems them. Pentecost shows that unity under God does not require uniformity. Diversity becomes a vehicle for glory rather than division. Conclusion. Babel's legacy today, approx. 5 minutes. Babel's legacy lives wherever. Progress replaces obedience, technology replaces humility, unity replaces truth. The question Babel asks every generation is simple. Will we build our name or trust God with his? Scripture ends with nations gathered, languages preserved, and God exalted. Babel scatters, Christ gathers. Come out of her, my people. Revelation 18-4. That is the final call, to leave Babel behind and enter the kingdom that cannot be shaken. End of script.